You're tuned in to the Development Tank Podcast with Peter Kelly.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Development Tank. This week we've got a super exciting episode to bring you guys heaps of value, but please just want to touch on loving the engagement, loving the direct messages, all the support. People seem to be loving it. Plenty of value there. So we're going to keep bringing it to you. Now in this episode, what you can expect is we've got a double header. So we've got our Fairfield site from a site acquisition point of view and our site insiders, and then into our project snapshot where we've got where the project's up to now and we're nearly about to start building. So we've got that full town planning process. We've got the acquisition process. So yeah, you'll be able to consume right to the end. So make sure you stick around because there is plenty of value to see us through. Now, something I did want to mention early on was school zones. The amount of inquiry that we've had around these sought after school zones, especially with immigration ticking over strongly, which I did mention last week, but I just left someone downstairs that has engaged us to find a site in the McKinnon school zone, which isn't our only one. So just something I want to mention to you guys, we feel like it can be a bit of a two-paced marketplace. With these school zones, we feel like it's been more insulated during the last 6 to 12 months that have been a bit of a battle here in Melbourne. And now we're expecting them to perform somewhat better than the rest of the market. And we're already starting to see that, which you guys saw last week when Gav missed out on that site. So we're already starting to see that pick up a lot quicker than the rest of Melbourne, which makes sense. With immigration happening, they value the school zones extremely high. So it's important that we watch that, guys. So anyway, we'll be bringing all that to you and keeping our finger on the pulse with those zones. All right, guys, that's enough from me. Keen to get into this site. It is one of my favorites, so please let me know what you think. Site insiders, if you know, you know. All right, guys, site insiders, if you know, you know. Welcome back. We've got Gav here, Australia's #1 site expert.
Yes, we got a great site this week. We bought this site about a year ago, March in 23, in an area that we love, but it's probably not our primary focus when we're looking at sites. You know, we as people know, we sort of look down through the southeast corridor and also Bayside. This one came to us off market from an agent and gave us a first crack at it. So it's in Fairfield, Victoria, in Melbourne. So if we go to Land Checker, we can zoom out here and we can get a gauge on where we're at. So we're 5 Ks from the Melbourne CBD, which is fantastic. Coming in a bit closer here, what we can see is Station Street just here. So you've got your Station Street Town Centre. It's the Fairfield train station is only 300 metres. It's literally at the end of the street.
The end of the street, Gav. Yeah, I must admit, this is definitely one of my favourite sites.
Yeah. Look, its location. And further to that, you've got High Street, which is just over here. So you've got High Street, Northcote. This is where all the cool kids hang out. And then a bit further north at Thornbury High Street as well is very, very popular. You've got Derribin Parklands just here, and just a bit further south down here, if I can, you've got Yarra Bend Parklands, which has got the golf course, heaps of sporting grounds. It's a great area, and it's very, very close to home.
Would people find you down there on your mountain bike on the weekend, Gav, from time to time?
I can tell you that there are some fantastic walking and mountain bike trails all through that area, right out to Westerfold. So yeah,
love it. All right, Gav, let's get into the bits and pieces and the variables of the site. What have we got?
Zooming into the site itself, as you can see here, that's Station Street there. There's your town centre. So we're literally one street back. We've got a 630 square metre block. It's a 15.8 metre frontage. So the frontage is good. It's also a GRZ2. So what that means is we've got 60% coverage. So
nice.
Which is, most areas 50%, some areas up in Banyule are 40%. 60% is fantastic, but added to that is this front setback, which is amazing.
Yeah,
so,
that's really nice, Gav.
So with 60% coverage and your front setback, what that does is allows us to build a decent sized townhouse, but also what it does is it'll provide some decent backyards, and it's a west facing lot, so you're still going to get your northerly sun through the day, and then in the afternoon you'll definitely get sun in through those back backyards and through the back of the living areas of the house.
Yeah, nice one, Gav. I think it's a great point just with that site coverage. Like a 630 site isn't a monster by any stretch, but when you can get it in a zone that does give you that 60%, it just gives you a lot more freedom, and you've got that small front setback. So for all those reasons, that's why we're excited by it, and essentially that's why we purchased it for our client.
And what it has allowed us to do is we've planning to build 2 30-square townhouses. So we're only not only are we going to get a decent sized backyard, but we've got a bit more room to work with in the actual design. So instead of going for a 27 square, in these inner city areas close to activity zones, you might find, a development like this, you're only going to have 24s, maybe 26 square townhouses, but we're actually targeting 30 square townhouses, which is, it's a fantastic living space, and also then getting a backyard.
Yeah, 100%. I think then it allows us as developers, or you guys out there, or clients, whoever you might be able to edge into that house market, which if this is 30 squares, 4 bed, 3 living, 2 living, 3 or 4 bath, you can be brand new 30 squares, and someone that's looking at a house in another area here can potentially entertain it, and usually the people that are looking for houses rather than townhouses have got deeper pockets. Well,
the thing is, in these areas as well, again, with even house lots, they can be around 500 square metres, maybe 600. So they're not huge house lots, and then you might have a 4-bedroom house on it. So those properties are going for $3.5 million, to buy. So in this instance here, we're probably targeting, maybe up to 3 mil, maybe a bit more even. So,
yeah.
But you're going to get, if those people who can't afford a 3.5 plus mil property, they can get a townhouse that's 30 squares, probably almost as big, with 300 odd square meters. So you're still getting the lifestyle, the yard, and now with this particular place, you're getting incredible proximity to the activities areas.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, the point is there also that even spending 3 mil on a house in these inner Melbourne areas, potentially it's not fully renovated, potentially it's not brand new, there's every chance it's not. So to walk into something ready to go, creature comforts, have everything thought of, I feel like that's a pretty good option for buyers out there. So one thing I am noticing, Gav, is there's not much to worry about out the front for crossovers, which would have been a good weight off our mind.
Yeah, look, it's great. There's no trees. There's no real trees on the site. There's no shadowing issues that we were worried about. And even for me, a small thing, but it's a little stickler, is the power lines are on the other side of the street. Even if it's not a post out front of the house, sometimes you get a post out front of the house and it might have big assets on it. Even if you don't have that, you always prefer to have the power lines on the opposite side of the street.
100%, and it is a nice outlook. We'll have the team will arrange the power pit, so power will go underground, which is standard with all these type of townhouse developments in these areas, which will just mean, the outlook is quite nice. So I guess we get into the meaty part of it, Gav, the numbers and the feasibility.
Yeah, so it initially came to us, like I said, off market, and they were asking sort of 2250 to 2350, and they were pretty flexible with maybe a longer settlement. For us, it was getting pretty tight around that price, that buy price. We didn't think it was, off the charts expensive, but just from a numbers perspective, from a project perspective, it was just getting a little bit tight. So we managed to negotiate a bit back and forth with the vendor. We ended up getting it down to 2125. So probably a good $100,000 underneath the bottom of the range. But we also then agreed to do a 4-month settlement. So we probably could have gotten 6+, but our client that bought this, which was the investment fund, they're a cash buyer.
Yeah.
We all like a longer settlement, but these guys, it doesn't impact them as much. So we use that as a bit of a bargaining tool to get the price down. Still, 4 months is terrific.
Yeah.
And managed to pick it up for a great price.
Yeah, awesome. No, the price does look good, and I guess knowing what we know that we're getting on the site, the price looks even better. But can you talk us through the build prices, and your other costs you've got in there?
Yeah, when we do these feasibilities, which in this case it was March last year, we can only enter the data that we've got that we know at the time. So we've allowed for this particular feasibility in March last year, 29,000 a square, which is pretty healthy, coming in around 1,775, and that's for a 30 square townhouse. So keeping in mind, maybe a little bit larger than what we might typically do, but we thought there was value in this area for doing that. That price, I don't know, may have moved a little bit over the last 12 months.
Yeah, potentially. And I think it's also valid in the last 12 months, we get to watch what's happening out there as well. So when we bought this, I feel like it was reasonably flat, I suppose. The interest rates had been going up for a long time there, so definitely not at the height of the market. Definitely it had slowed down, and I feel like the year we've had, and also even just the the due diligence that you and the projects team continue to do, I think it's important to note that our team watches the market and continues to watch the market. So it's not good enough to buy a site and go, hey, this is the Feaso, come hell or high water, this is what we're going to deliver. I think it's important to make sure you keep a close watch on what's selling, what's for sale in the area, and speaking to agents and keeping your finger on the pulse, because I think, which we'll get into with Claire in our project Snapshot segment, is I think the build price will tweak up a bit, but for very good reason, because of the data that you guys are getting and, the amazing area that it is. And we feel like, which you'll get to in a minute, your resales, we feel like they've probably moved north.
It's also important to note as well that if you were to build, or pricing back then in March, for a more of a standard townhouse, maybe in a southeast area, not in one of the hot premium spots, you'd be building for, say, 25,000 square back then. I mean, those prices now are probably closer to 26, 27. So at that time, 29 was actually quite a decent budget. I remember we were talking about it because we thought we want to put a bit more money into this. There were comps nearby, just a street away, a bit further out, probably not as good a location. And those townhouses, they were similar in nature. They were selling for 275 and 3, I think.
Yeah, they were the comps. Yeah,
and it was a great product. There were nice finishes. So we thought, look, we can see value in putting up, probably going from, say, 25,000 square up to 29. So at the time, there was good money in the delivery.
Yeah, 100%. And I think even the numbers you said there, it's probably been a 10% shift, from 12 months ago. So
I would say so.
Which we'll get into later, but that square meter rate could be closer to 31 or something like that, 31, 32. But I feel like they're going to be there in the resales. So where did we have the resales at this point in time when we bought it?
So when we did this feasibility, like I said, we had comps around between that sort of from 2.7 up to 3, and we were thinking that we're pretty comfortable with about 2.64 we had on it, and that gave us, and that's comfortable. Sometimes you've really got to search hard to find comps. In this instance, we felt really, really comfortable with that 2.640, and with those sort of resales, we were looking at about a 15.5% ROI and a very tidy sort of 670,000 net profit.
Yeah, awesome. So I think, that's a good point. Like, essentially, we had our buy price there. We've got our resales in there. Could we have argued a bit higher at the time? Maybe we could have. But if a site stacks up there, it's good. We just get it. We let it play out, and then we'll revisit the feasibility probably closer to build, which we're probably getting close to about now. Yeah. Which I think all those things will dial, but it's just a good lesson out there that once you buy it, it doesn't mean set and forget and your numbers are going to be the same as what they are when you started. I think it's super important to make sure you're watching that market intimately, and not to mention, once your plans do come to fruition, you get your permit, then you're starting to deal with real life things and rather than estimations and that sort of stuff. So it gives you confidence to then wind up your numbers or wind down, whatever it may look like. So, Gav, well done. You're Australia's #1 site expert for a reason, finding sites like this.
It's a great site. It's a fantastic location.
Yeah, love it. Guys, we're about to get into Project Snapshot, so make sure you hang about because these floor plans look amazing and we're going to go through them with Claire. Gav, thanks for another amazing site, mate. We'll see you next week.
Back next week.
Bang. All right, guys, let's get into it. Project Snapshot, super excited about this one. Obviously, we just went through the acquisitions with Gav. Now we've got Claire, our little fish head of projects. currently managing 80 sites, mind you. So I had to crowbar up here last week to give us this value, but it's just super important that we get it from the person who's managing the team that's managing the projects, because the insight is invaluable, and the little bits and pieces, the intricacies that Claire will be able to go through, they're the lessons. I guess staying high level, I don't think you learn as much, but going in and understanding why council made us do this, why we made this decision, all those sort of things, they're the nuggets that are going to set you guys up and protect you guys on your projects. So Claire, Little Fish Head of Projects, thanks for coming back.
Thanks for having me again. And just to be clear, I do love my 80 projects, but this is the highlight of my week.
Oh, thank you. Well said. Well, maybe we'll get you back next week. Yeah. So this project is a bit of a stable favourite, I suppose, and I know it's one that you're super excited by. Why does this one excite you?
This is probably my favourite project out of the 80 currently. I love it. I love the facades. I love the design, the location. When we first, or you and Gav acquired it and we went out to site to have a look, it's 2 seconds from the main strip, Station Street, and it's just got a great feel about it.
Yeah, great point. I think, for around that circa 2 mil, 2.1 in this case, to be in the location it is, as far as the northern suburbs of Melbourne go, it is quite prime. And as people know, if they follow property closely, the closer you are to the city, the smaller the blocks are, the more prolific the heritage overlays are, and the battle it is to get a proper dual lock in. So as far as location-wise, this is 5 Ks from the CBD in Melbourne. It's over 600 square metres of land. You've got a couple of 30 square dwellings on it. So I feel like for that reason, it's really exciting. The location's awesome.
Yeah, I love it.
So Claire, can you take us to project brief? You've got the initial sketch plan up there by the look.
Yeah, let's go through it. So first brief, or I suppose initial brief for this was, it's a side-by-side. We are a rear west-facing block. So trying to incorporate that northern light is always a big one, a little bit more difficult with a side-by-side. We wanted to ensure that we had 4 bedrooms, 2 masters. We wanted genuine masters on ground floor, just in case we were to hit that downsizer market. 2 live-ins, great size kitchens with butler's pantry. And we were happy with single garages, but we really wanted to include that storage, especially for bikes in this area.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. If you don't go the double, as people can see there in the front area there, you can get in your laundry, you get in extra storage, you get in a study. The powder's even sort of benefited from that width. Quickly, before we dive into, I guess, the cool stuff, the layouts, Can you talk to us about the implications of the special building overlay, which are prevalent on this site? Yeah,
so we did. We've got a flood overlay, and honestly, of the site, it clips this block just like a metre. But what you'll find is it actually impacts the entire site. So whether it clips it by a metre or it takes up half your site, your whole site's affected. When we get through these plans and we look at elevations, you'll see how it's impacted. But essentially, Melbourne Water will dictate the level at which you have to have your finished floor level. In this case, I'll show you a bit later, but we're about 600 mil out of the ground from memory. So it impacts the site more so at the front rather than the back. It's not impossible. You've just got, if you have a look here, your entrances, you'll have steps here, This deck is set down from internally. And then at the back, when we move forward, you'll see that it sort of evens out a little bit at the back.
Yeah, nice. And I think, I guess fixing those problems at the front and not having, I can't see a step on ground floor inside the building, which is great.
Yeah, it's good. It's probably impacted other sites more. I think we got away with it quite well in this area, but it's really determined by what comes back during your council or your town planning process from Melbourne Water.
Great. So now looking at ground floor, this thing's got everything.
Yeah, these are really, really good plans. And 2 other aspects I didn't mention, but we really wanted to include internal courtyards, both from both from a light aspect, but also just to break up the long tunnels that you get with a townhouse. And then we really wanted to try and get increased ceiling heights in our living areas just for a sense of space.
Yeah, love it.
And we achieved both.
Yeah, and I think based on how good the site is, the fact that we've been able to go, all right, cool, we'll get the master downstairs and we'll get another sitting, another living on ground, I think super exciting, because someone who's got the kids and that sort of thing, like myself, having the double living downstairs, I think's a really great value add, because often you'll have the living upstairs and only one living downstairs, which can be common, but the kids, they want to be close to you. So the fact that we've got a second living there where kids and toys and all that sort of stuff can live, but then the adults can live meals and living, for me, that's gold.
And probably to touch on these masters, it's something to note. People think masters, it has to have a walk-in robe. This, we haven't included a walk-in robe purely for size, but if you get really nice joinery, we often talk about in here, and I know you say you would take wardrobes before walk-in robes.
Well, sometimes, unless it's a proper walk-in robe, which I reckon when we get upstairs, you'll probably show me a proper walk-in robe. But downstairs, especially when things are tight and that sort of thing, the amount of storage that you get with your built-in robes versus a half walk-in robe. Half walk-in robes are a bit of a fallacy, I think, because a lot of the room's taken up with just moving space. So I agree, and both big walls of joinery. So yeah, tick, and the room sizes are pretty big. When you're getting sort of 3738 by 3738, happy days.
And then just quickly before we go upstairs, these internal courtyards, which we have been able to achieve, they help the flood overlay, because you'll see here we're set in a metre or 1200 from the sides. That's due to the flood overlay. So yeah. I didn't touch on that before, but that is due to the flood overlay. So this again helps that overlay or hit that condition. But the key to this, I think, a lot of townhouses you'll see that meals, living, kitchen all together in one back room. This creates sort of a division between the two and another space, which again just makes it feel bigger.
Yeah, correct. I think the day and age where we live in open plan living, which is fine, it makes total sense, but to be able to have zones inside the open plan living, I think super important. I think what you'll find is when townhouses get small and get really squished for space, suddenly your living, meals and kitchen are in one box. But yeah, it's a show of, I guess, how good a layout is if a kitchen can be in its own zone and then you've got meals and living that have got plenty of space. But that pantry, that long bench space there, those long pieces of stone, I think are gonna be super high end.
A hero. And on a summer's day, you open up this, that becomes your entire kitchen and dining space.
Yeah, spot on. Yeah, I think it's a real flexible space. So, and I think just for everyone playing along at home, these plans do evolve. So wait until they evolve. The crux of them is here, but these do get better. So if you want to take us upstairs, Claire.
So upstairs, like you touched on before, Peter, genuine master space with a genuine walk-in robe. So we've achieved the walk-in robe, but again, as you see, this is the same amount of storage as downstairs, but we have the luxury of being able to hide it, which people do love and appreciate. We've also got our second living in both of them, and then 2 extra bedrooms and a bath and separate powder, which is a great value add. I don't mind the toilet, I should say, in the bath, but separate powders are a huge win, and a lot of people like it. I don't know what your thoughts are. Yeah,
no. I think if you've got the space, you can do it for sure, and depending on your sort of your family makeup. But yeah, if you've got the space, you can do it. But yeah, sometimes I think there's value in making your bathroom bigger. I think, Claire, that bedroom 3 on the top unit, that walk-in robe there, and I'm assuming these plans are going to evolve, and I'm not sure that will live on, but that's an example of a walk-in robe that is not of any value, and get it out of there and make it a built-in robe, and you'll get more storage.
It's like I planted this here. But that is exactly
and you got me hook, line and sinker, because that is just frustration, because that is awkward and that won't work and that won't live on. So please, in the comments, guys, talk to us about walk-in robes versus built-in robes. Are you with me or not? So please, can we go to the next iteration of plans so we can see the tweaks that you guys have made?
I hope we changed it.
Yeah, I know. I've gone early here. Thanks, Claire. So we've got the next phase of plans. These are looking sweeter.
They've evolved. They've been refined. They look good.
I'm seeing a pool.
You are seeing a pool. So
Okay.
a bit of a change. What happened was, in the team, in the office, we all started talking about pools. People want more pools. People want to buy a house with a pool. We went back to Gav. Gav went back to the feasibility. We spoke to agents. We did our research. How much is a pool going to cost? Plungy pool plus, fence landscaping around versus the resale, the value add. And it turns out it stacks up.
It stacks up. So I notice you've only put it in one, which I don't mind that. That's called hedging your bets. But essentially, I think we, been around long enough to hear stories of people loving pools and some people not so much. But also, even just from a purely commercial standpoint, it does cost more. So it does dial that risk. But I think taking one to market that has got the pool, I think nearly de-risks it, because some people love pools, wouldn't live without pools, and the actual investors involved in this one sort of agreed with the pool. So to hedge the bets and have one with it and one without, I think is gold. And it looks like you put it in the north unit as well, which makes a lot of sense.
Exactly. Well, just to touch on that, I was going to say we did go back to the investors because it does cost more money, but they were comfortable with it. And I suppose the other item is, which we always like to do with all our developments, is trying to create two different products. So a lot of people don't want to buy the same house as what they've got next door. So whether we do that with interiors or with the facade, this is another element. We create a pool, we put it in the north facing backyard, and have those two elements and those two types of houses.
Yeah, perfect. Well, that's real estate in general, isn't it? A scarcity. So, and we obviously do townhouse projects. We mainly do 2s, 3s, maybe 4s, but 2s predominantly and 3s. But yeah, it's about creating a different product, about creating scarcity, delivering something that someone can't get from somewhere else. And the floor plans do look a lot different now. It looks like you've kept the sitting on the lower unit there.
Yeah, I'll talk you through them. So essentially, the front has stayed the same, relatively so. Your masters here, it's been tweaked slightly, just more of a location of built-in robes, but the masters are still both there. But what we've done in this north unit is we've actually removed the sitting, pulled back everything to ensure we can fit the pool in and still get a really good backyard. But it's also minimising the overall size of the build, right? So we didn't touch on it on the last plans, but we were at 29.5 for both. And now we're sitting at just over 29 for Unit 1 and just under 29 for Unit 2. So we're going to minimise a little bit of the build cost just in terms of size, which again gives us justification for this pool, but also, again, two different products.
Yeah, I like it. I think, and potentially two different buyers. Someone that's loving the pool might dive straight in. People that aren't that fussed on the pool but really appreciate the extra sitting room, I think super important. I like what you've done here.
You'll see also at the rear of the property, especially on this south facing, we included some celestial windows up the top, which will gain that north facing light. Yeah,
nice. That's what I was going to ask you. Like, obviously the north unit isn't going to have a problem with light. What do we do to sort of counteract that for the south unit?
Obviously your backyard will still get a lot of north light. So there's still a great, I suppose, in this rear, you're still going to get some element. You're also a west facing rear. So you're going to get that afternoon sun, which is what a lot of people want. What we've done here, and we either usually do it via skylights or in this case, a celestial window, which I will show you when we jump down to the facade. Do you want me to?
Yeah, I like it. No, well, let's go upstairs and then we'll go to elevation if that's...
Yeah. Okay, upstairs, very similar. What we've done though is we've pushed the retreat to the rear of this property.
Like it, which is fix that walk-in robe issue.
Yeah, exactly. and being able to get some light into that retreat is the key.
Yeah, that retreat looks great.
What we've done here is we did include open living down to the room below. This will evolve, but essentially these two, downstairs and upstairs, has become one big space.
Exciting.
Very similar on the south-facing unit. But again, I suppose something else to note, which is important for everyone designing at home, is we could have made upstairs a lot bigger. We have the space to move back, which often you'll get clients who want to. They want to push the limits, but everything costs money, and even though you're just increasing your square meterage, it's still flooring, plaster, timber. So to ensure that you're containing that build price, you don't need to go overboard just for the sake of it. And that's probably another reason we removed that living downstairs, that third living, I should say.
Yeah, spot on. I think that's a great point, because just because you can doesn't mean you should. And when you get to that build tender stage, those prices will flow through. And if you've decided to sneak a square here and half a square there and half a square there, it'll definitely flow through to your build prices. So that's a good one. And the thing is, nothing has been missed here. No one's going to walk through these properties at the end and go, wow, a bit pokey. So I feel like you've ticked all the boxes, and ultimately these need to be commercial decisions unless you are going to live in them and it is close to your heart to have extra space. That's fine. But whilst you are developing for profit, it's important that you don't go overboard and you do dial it back where you can.
Okay, facades.
Yeah.
Let's go. So we've got facades and the rear here. The idea was to have very similar form across both units, but create a brother-sister feel through colour and materials, which is what we've done. We've gone with black and white. At the rear, what we've done, and this is what we were talking about, if you highlight in here, this is your celestial window, which will get that northern aspect. Lots of glass in the rear, trying to create as much light, and heightened ceiling spaces internally.
Looks high end, looks like money, looks good. So have these evolved?
They have. Once we got the council RFI and the comments back, you will see, we'll get to it, but they have changed quite a bit.
Yeah, great. Yeah. And I think that's important. This is the bit, guys, that you want to listen into hard, because dealing with councils, that's where you can win or you can lose. So I'm really interested to hear how the team navigated these decisions and navigated the request for further information from council. Okay, great. So these are the floor plans by the looks. Got all the detail in there, got all the services, looking great.
Again, we've tried to, just externally, you'll see a lot more detail on these plans now. We engaged a landscape architect for this job. I suppose the project location, the designer warranted it in this area. So we do have landscape plans. We have spent a lot of time to hide our services, as always. We've got built-in pool equipment here. We've included deck. We've included pavers for this side.
We've got outdoor kitchens by the looks. They look perfect for the product and the area.
Yeah, really good. So these will, which you won't see in these plans, but in the working drawings, this joinery will flow on. Smaller details like this wall here have been purposely designed to hide the tank, but for the joinery to fit into this space. So all these elements you don't see at this point, but they will come later in the working drawings. Yeah,
great work. That's a good point, because, for people maybe starting out or depending on what designer you're using, it's super important that you do look at those little details and that sort of thing, because it will look after you in the end, and people will look at it and go, wow, someone's thought about this, and the joinery and everything flows. It creates straight lines. So that's a good point.
Minor details, but things like we've relocated the step. It's quite a deep step, but relocated it to the stair, which allows this deck then this whole space will be at one level. That's again with your flood overlay and the height of this building. But previously, the step was out here, which just then all of a sudden you've got 1, 2, 3 different spaces. So we've done that to create larger spaces externally. All those little elements when it comes to townhouses are important, because you don't have land to play with.
Yeah, 100%. And I think people are more savvier than ever, and they will look at those sort of things. I just love that central deck area and courtyard area. You've got your bedroom looking out onto it. You sort of got your kitchen looking out onto it, and you've even dragged the meals looking out onto it. So that external aspect, nice landscaping out there. This has got real house feels about it.
Yeah, it's really nice. You'll see we've added skylights here over the meals area, minimise the amount of walls out to your sort of service areas, but haven't shied away from getting light elsewhere.
Yeah, love it. Now, upstairs, has that evolved at all?
Yeah, we have. So I touched on just before that we created a retreat, sort of downstairs living retreat space as one. As you've probably touched on a lot of times, but we always go and get feedback. We speak to agents, we speak to what's out there, and we ended up just going back to a standard retreat as a genuine second living. So you can, your kids can be up there, they can be playing whatever they're doing, but you're not hearing it downstairs.
Yeah, which is separate, which that north unit, it hasn't got the extra living like the other unit has. So yeah, I think that's an important one to have that second space.
We've included a study. So we did increase the size slightly upstairs on the bottom unit or the south unit. We've included a study, and the prime reason for that is that we removed the study to this entrance to create a bigger entrance.
Good, perfect. And I think it's important, which is small things, which I think sometimes can fall through the gaps. But that study, that's a half height wall there. That wall's not a full height wall. So when you come up into that retreat, you've got this sense of space. That study and retreat and hallway and stair void area is one whole space, which is going to allow light in. It's going to feel much bigger. So I think that's super important, that if it doesn't need to be a full height wall and it can just be a half height wall to break up the zones but still create a bigger feel and a bigger ceiling area, I think that's important.
So that's interesting you bring that up, because it's a topic, it's a small topic, but it's being discussed right now. We're thinking of removing it entirely. There's mixed opinions. One real estate agent has said remove it, interiors want to remove it.
Yeah, I think, and I actually saw it before and I thought, well, the desk could live on the back of bed 3 wall and that could be your study. So for me, I'm happy to remove it, happy to have it half height, but definitely don't want it going all the way to ceiling. So anyone out there in the comments, do we leave the wall or do we remove the half height wall?
Okay, let's go to facades because they have changed a lot. So in essence, the RFI came back from council. They didn't like the dark scheme. They wanted something lighter in that street. On top of that, they also didn't like our flat roof and our overall modern take on the facades. So I suppose one thing to know with council is give them enough so they're happy. We didn't want to budge on our overall form. We really liked that. We wanted to pop in the street. We wanted these to be a talking point, but we weren't bound to the colours. So it was something we were happy to give up. As you said, commercially minded, it's not going to change. If anything, to be honest, I think we've got a better product.
Yeah, I like it. And I think the lesson in that is picking out what you really want and what you don't want to forego, and then picking what you can give to council to sort of say, hey, if we do this and we do that, and then potentially they don't go as hard on you on other items. So, and this has got a permit as well.
Correct. They're really happy with this one. So they overall, they were happy with the modern. It was just the colours that were turning them off. I will also duck down to the rear. So the west elevation, you'll notice this has changed quite significantly. Also in the RFI, Darebin has come back, and any west-facing windows needed to have shading devices on them. So if you remember, we had quite high glass up here. Great aspect, but it was going to have to be shaded in the end. Added cost to create the raked ceiling internally. By the time we shaded it, it's just not worth it. Yep. We've still been able to create 3-metre high ceilings, floor-to-ceiling glass, which will get a lot of light and get the overall outcome we're after, but reducing the costs of A, both the louvers, and B, the cost to do a raked ceiling that high internally.
Yeah, fantastic. And you can see that ceiling height / door height, glass height is around that 3 metres, which I've been in townhouses that have got the 3-metre ceilings, and it is a nice, very, very nice feeling.
While we're here, I will note this fixed glass probably my favourite feature of the whole development. This lines up perfectly with the pool out the front of it. So as you're sitting in that lounge room, if I can flick back, you will focus on this pool.
Yeah, how good's that? And that's an aspect from the living, from the meals, looking straight out to the kitchen. That's nice. It's a nice touch.
And just before we finish up on the facades, you'll see here's this 600 high finished floor level that we were talking about with the flood overlay. So it hasn't impacted it greatly. We've got a couple of steps at the front, but as you'll see, our natural ground level goes up. So we've been able to, it kind of ends up leveling out back here, which has allowed us to get our 3 metre high ceilings. Yeah,
it actually makes sense. And it's not that big of a deal. And I think just touching on the special building overlay, the flood overlay that you're talking about, it is, it's not anything for anyone to worry about as far as from a buying perspective. It's just Melbourne Water and being sort of super conscious about those once in 100-year water events and that sort of thing. So it is something you need to contend with, but definitely not something that buyers would be and should be looking at when it comes time to find somewhere to live.
No, absolutely not. And I suppose on recent projects with the same overlay, we have gone in and argued to start our natural ground level from that flood level, which still allows you to get the height. So it is something worth arguing if you're worried about your height.
Yeah, good. Great advice. Now, where is this project up to now? No doubt you're keeping a close eye on this one.
Yeah, we've got a planning permit, like you said. We're currently working on both working drawings and endorsement together, as well as the interiors. So we've finalised interior layouts. The interiors team is working on selection of materials. I think we have a meeting on that next week. And then we're due to get preliminary working drawings in about a week as well for review. We're about to sit down with DIY blinds to run through automatic blinds and curtains. That needs to be captured into the working drawings for electrical purposes. And we're due to sit down with a lighting consultant in the next fortnight.
Yeah, so this one is getting the right treatment, I suppose, but based on where resales are headed, I think it's probably justified. And I think just touching on, which we touched on with Gav, the resales were circa sort of 226, 27. We're getting pretty bullish in here about what's selling in the area and the product that is getting presented here. And, we do think we're heading closer to 3, or even we could push past 3. But yeah, definitely feel like it's an exciting project, and different results in the area are definitely supporting those higher resale numbers.
I think that's important to note too, because as we see those higher 3+ resales come to light, you look what's in them, and they are the expectation is, to have automatic blinds and to have a pool in one, and to make sure you've got your natural stone, all those finishes. So I think you touched on it earlier with Gav, but we're constantly looking at those resales and making sure our product is going to hit that value.
Yeah, it's definitely a good point. And for anyone playing along at home, it's super important to make sure you're current and make sure you know what's selling out there and why is it selling. You can't stay in your own bubble and think you know, because that can leave you unstuck and leave you exposed when you're left with a product that doesn't hit the mark, and then suddenly you're foregoing a lot of resale price there and foregoing a lot of margin. So keeping your finger on the pulse through this design and planning stage and then into your build and working drawing stage is super important. So yeah, good work on that.
We might have to retouch on this in a few months.
Well, yeah, 100%. So this one will probably, it's probably 12 months away from completion. So we'll definitely be keeping a close eye, and we'll get you back on, Claire, for the project snapshot if we can pull you away from downstairs. But yeah, super excited to see how this one goes. And I think in an improving market, this could be a real standout project.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Guys, if you're still here, Little Fish Network drops next week. If you're still here, you're definitely a candidate for that. So stick around for that. We will talk about that next week. Thanks for hanging about. Now, please drop some comments. Tell us what you thought. This is our first double header, acquisition into project snapshot. Please give us some love there. Thanks for sticking around. Happy developing.